The government is corrupt. To fix this, politicians would like to grow its size and control. The Kate Daly Show starts now.
I'll be wronged. I won't be insulted. I won't be laid a hand on. I don't do these things to other people. I require the same from them.
Slap some bacon on a biscuit and let's go. We're burning daylight.
How much do I love the John Wayne liners to the show. If you've listened to the show a long time, I've been playing those a long time, since like the beginning. Anyway, 16 years has flown by. Anyway, welcome, Kate Daly Show. I've got Melissa on tap today. Susan is out, and appreciate Melissa being here. In fact, we're going to be talking a lot about fraud. Fraud and... oh gosh, I mean, the list is long. The list is very, very long. So there's a lot to talk about. I just wanted to welcome Melissa, of course, and welcome, Melissa. How are you?
I'm good, as ever.
Okay.
My dog is getting a reputation for being the weather predictor. That's crazy.
How
it's
weird.
only in the Midwest would that happen.
That's funny. So what does he do if it's going to rain?
I usually get about between 15 and maybe 45-minute heads up because he runs and sits in my bathroom. And he'll be just laying around and he'll pop up and run to the bathroom. And I'm like, oh, it's coming in right now. So I just got a text from a friend who said, what's the weather dog saying? And I said, weather dog says rain. She says, I thought so too.
I swear dogs know things. Anyway, they do. They really do. All right. Well, we're going to be talking about fraud and corruption, and this will be an interesting show for sure. Did you want to start out, though? What's going on in the UK?
There's a hot story breaking in the UK. Keir Starmer, the current prime minister from the Labour Party, looks like he's going to get flipped out of office here shortly. Probably Nigel Farage says before the end of May. We'll see if he's right or not. But according to Dan Wootton, who's an independent journalist out of the UK, he said, this is straight from Dan Wootton, Starmer has led a pedophilic administration.
Ooh.
And Wootton is saying this isn't about a Starmer's sex life. We don't care about that, but we do care that he has misrepresented himself and lied to both Parliament and to the British people.
Yeah.
So that he's a liar. That's the big thing. And now he's been caught out in those lies. They have connected him to one of the Epstein named people. Well, we won't call him a pedophile. Mandelson. Or somebody Mandelson who, and now there's a connection between him and Keir Starmer, giving him kind of an easier treatment and giving him access to confidential information, which he then went out and did bad things with. But anyway, yes. And we can add to that 3 Ukrainian, they're calling them rent boys.
Rent boys.
I'll let you assume whatever you think a rent boy is. I'm sure I don't know, but I could make a guess.
That just sounds horrid. Okay.
But these Ukrainian rent boys firebombed Starmer's home. And they've been arrested, and there's a trial coming up. As of today, Starmer's wife and 2 sons have moved out of number 10 Downing Street. And one of the journalists who broke the story had to leave the UK in order to break that story, because had he broken it inside the US, or inside the UK, he would have been arrested.
Interesting. Okay.
So here's how Dan Wootton characterized Starmer. The most hated man in the UK and the worst prime minister in history.
Ooh, ouch. Ouch. Okay. Well.
Yeah. So, that's certainly a story to watch.
That's a story to watch for sure.
What happens in the UK has impact here as well. And this is all happening right ahead of King Charles' visit to Trump coming up in just a little bit.
Interesting. I do have, I want to blow out a couple of numbers at people about major fraud in the U.S. You want me to do that really fast?
Sure, that would be great.
Okay, this will
great way to kick it off.
This will start us off. How much has NASA been spending since the 1960s? I know it goes a little further than that, but let's just say for the sake of the conversation, since the 1960s. $1.8 trillion. Trillion. Okay. 1.8 trillion.
In total or year by year?
That is in total from what they say. Okay.
Okay.
How much has been spent on the Ukraine war? Because I'm talking about big fraud and corruption. 185 actually $1 billion up until last year. They're counting just until 2025, 185 billion. How much have we spent on Afghanistan since the 1960s? 2.6 plus trillion. Okay. The war on terror. Oh, you can't even imagine this one, because I think that when we develop ISIS and we develop all of these different Hamas, Israel developed Hamas as their controlled opposition, and you have all these different groups, right? So the war on terror, $8 trillion. And that's just through 2020, not to mention what's happened lately. So that's just to 2020 was over $8 trillion. How much have we spent on the climate change bogus gobbledygook? Okay. So from 1960s to 2025, over $2 trillion on climate change. Okay. No one can tell you how it actually has affected their life. Nobody can tell you, as they've lived through decades of climate change, what has changed, but they will tell you it's occurring. Okay. And over $2 trillion. How much has been spent on the CIA? Like, how much has the CIA spent? And it even says these are actually rough estimates, because we never get a black budget on this, but it's over $1.5 trillion on the CIA and what they've been up to, and all the corruption and the horrible crazy that they have brought to this world since their inception, and to our country. So that is just very rough numbers, because it was way more than that. But 8 trillion, 2.6 trillion, 1.8 trillion. I mean, I'm talking a lot of money here. And so I just kind of wanted to go over some of the big, rough numbers of where we stand and how much money's been hijacked. And that doesn't even include the missing money. Remember, 2.4, billion here and billion there and trillion here and trillion there. When they get a headline that says, oh, we just can't find it, and then those headlines shut off and we can move on to the next thing. That's happened multiple times. I'm just telling you that it's pretty big.
Let me add to that.
Okay.
The shadow economy of fraud in the United States is estimated to be $1 trillion annually. So while some of the numbers that you just gave, we're talking about, since the 1960s or in the last 10 years or whatever, fraud in the U.S. is actually a shadow economy. Money is constantly being siphoned off in various fraud systems. That's not necessarily what you just talked about, is government fraud, and that's bad too. But think about the enormity of the amount of money that we are paying as taxpayers into a system that is stealing the money, money laundering it, diverting it to other causes that we don't care about or didn't pay for. It's going to other countries that are money, in a money laundering scheme. There's a lot of money slushing around. And when you talk about $1 trillion annually, that's an incredible amount of money.
Wow.
In fraud, and just fraud, whether it's healthcare fraud or whether it's whatever that fraud is. We're losing, it kind of makes me angry. I had, we just passed tax day, right?
Yeah.
And I had to get my checkbook out. And it makes me kind of mad, because I know that the money that we had to work for in our home went to fraud. A portion of it certainly did.
Yeah.
And every single one of us is paying for that.
Yeah.
And we're paying for it in all kinds of unimaginable ways. When it's insurance fraud, when it's Medicare fraud, when it's, healthcare fraud, we're paying for that in increased premiums, in lower quality of care, in lower standards of care, and less efficiency in our healthcare system.
Yeah.
Great, huh?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. All right. So let's talk about
Well,
it. Dial in.
Yeah. Well, let's start out with this. It's always good to kind of start out with a story we can kind of put our hands around. So there's a woman named Lynn Ianni who got injured playing in a pickleball game, right?
Yes.
In Los Angeles County, by the way.
Okay.
And she went
a pickleball game can do damage? Oh, okay.
Pardon?
I didn't realize pickleball was so harmful. Okay, go ahead.
Well,
I can't wait to hear
I don't
this.
know. I don't know how she got injured. Did she take a fall or?
I mean,
who
it's
knows?
pickleball.
Who knows?
It's not even tennis. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, well, excuse me. I misspoke, by the way. She's from Seattle.
Okay.
But when she went to the doctor to get her injury looked at, she got notified that she was not going to get any care because she was already in a hospice. She was dying and in hospice, and they weren't going to pay for her pickleball injury.
Wow.
So what she did, and by the way, and she was in a hospice in Los Angeles County. That's the Los Angeles connection. She's from Seattle. She's dying in a hospice in Seattle or in Los Angeles, but she had just gone to the doctor. She was not dying. She was not in a hospice. She just had a pickleball injury, and she would have never known that she was going to die in a hospice in LA if she hadn't gone to the doctor.
All right.
So after she was denied, she began to investigate on her own. A scammer stole her Medicare ID number and enrolled her in hospice without her knowledge.
Okay.
And Medicare came back while this is all happening and said, if you don't continue to pay your premiums, we won't give you any coverage in Medicare. That's nice, huh?
Yeah.
So she tracked down the hospice facility and found out that it was located in a strip mall. And then she tracked down the doctor who signed off on the fake care through their national provider identifier and found out that it was a surgeon from Santa Monica whose identity had also been stolen, and he had no connection to the hospice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So she ended up testifying in front of Congress about all of this, which is good.
Okay.
She said in her testimony that she would not have been able to solve this had it not been for an advocacy group that stepped up to help her. And ended up having to get a new Medicare card and having to, just kind of start over. All right. That's kind of the personal picture. That could happen to any one of us. Right. And she didn't even know that her Medicare number had been stolen. The doctor didn't know his identifier had been stolen. So it can happen to anyone at any time.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure.
So recently, those of you that follow the adventures of Nick Shirley, the YouTuber that kind of blasted the Minnesota Somali daycares, he has now blasted a new story out about California. He's still looking at daycares, but he's added hospice fraud to the list as well. So it's just bad. What's happening in California? California is seemingly the epicenter of this fraud. And the reason why is because California collects more in tax dollars than any other state in the union. So there's a lot of money slushing around.
Yeah.
For clever people to pick up.
I just saw a headline that Gavin Newsom is for Babylon Bee, of course. So Gavin Newsom is draining lakes, knowing that fire season is coming. So anyway, I mean that
makes perfect sense.
I'm from there. I was raised there in California, in Orange County, and it's just sickening. It's so grotesque what's happened there. Oh my gosh.
Well, it's kind of funny because I did. In looking at this whole issue, I did find Newsom has made a comment about all of this. And you know what Nick Shirley has found, right? You don't have to predict it very hard. He's going to find huge fraud everywhere, everywhere he goes. And so what Gavin says is, kind of like this. We've known about fraud for a really long time, and we're looking into it. So why doesn't he just pipe down? Because we're looking into it.
Right.
Like a totally inadequate response. So, what has Shirley found? He has found, and by the way, after Nick Shirley did his expose, that he posted a 40-minute video on X, and CBS News, a CBS News affiliate in California, kind of replicated it.
Okay.
They found 89 hospices that were billing from one single address in California.
Wow.
And
Okay.
they're all, yeah.
Jeez.
There's,
how many?
they have 89 in one building.
Wow. That's
And
bold.
yet again, that's the
bold.
comments that get made about that is, well, yeah, like only 49 of them are billing California. That's Newsom. I'm like,
Oh my gosh.
okay, that doesn't really help, Gavin.
My gosh.
You're a moron.
Mhm. Yeah. Well,
Anyway.
yeah.
So what is
He's
the
a puppet.
scam and how does it work? It works in a lot of ways. They are setting up, these are like home healthcare places, which means that do they need to have actual patients on the site? Maybe not. If they are, I had parents that were receiving some hospice care at the very end of their life. And so there's a central office and they just deploy their employees to the right address.
Yes.
My mom was in a nursing home. So the hospice nurse went to the nursing home to assist her there. So
Okay.
you can imagine, but on investigation,
Mm-hmm.
they're finding out that there are ghost patients.
Ghost
meaning-
patients.
Ghost patients. Yes.
So in
This
number
is
only? Is this like in code only? No actual
Well,
patient, just
correct.
using numbers?
No, it's supernatural, Kate.
Yes, a
They're
ghost
actual
appears.
ghosts, and they're voting in Democratic primaries as well.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
no, they have like we have a list of 50 people, and we're claiming that all 50 of these people are receiving hospice care, but those 50 people are not real people. They're not real patients.
Sure.
Now, they might be real people somewhere. It's just like this woman who said she was denied Medicare coverage
Sure.
because she was in a hospice. Well, no, she wasn't. But somebody was billing Medicare, or in California, Medi-Cal, the state level
Right.
health care. Somebody's billing for care of all those patients. So, yeah, it's bad. They're using
It is
stolen
bad.
identities.
Mm-hmm.
How do they steal your identity? Could be a lot of different ways. This kind of made me think about some of my habits.
Uh-huh.
Some of these people are stealing identities out of lockers at fitness clubs. They just go through and they take your wallet or they maybe don't even take your wallet. They might only take your ID.
Yeah, I don't think they need to
And
anymore.
no,
Tell
they
you the
don't. They
truth.
don't really need to take your whole wallet. They're not interested in your money. You might not even notice that someone has taken that. And they're taking the SIM card out of phones. And with that, they can reproduce your identity.
Jeez, that's scary.
Yeah. Or they're buying lists off the dark web.
Right.
And then they're creating a fake enrollment for patients. Then they're billing Medicare or Medi-Cal for services never provided. It's huge. It's huge. And they're right now, California, and in fact, Gavin Newsom is right about this. California has been trying to crack down on this for a number of years. And one of the things that Newsom says is, hey, we can take care of Medi-Cal fraud because that's state level. But much of this, this is him pushing it back at Trump. He said, this is Medicare fraud. That's federal.
Right.
You need, the federals need to take care of that. This is not, we can't investigate Medicare fraud because we are just the state of California. If you've got a problem with all this fraud, why don't you get your investigators in here and figure it out? Which I think is actually reasonably an important point.
Gosh.
Yeah,
Gosh.
it's bad.
Yeah.
That's a
Hmm.
huge problem.
Yeah. And I'm going to
Um,
guesstimate that the illegals' healthcare spending is in the trillions as well. Yes, I would imagine.
I don't know, but I would guess.
I don't think it's much of a leap. I'll say that. I don't think it's much of a leap. It's probably right up there with climate change gobbledygook. So,
Well, I found this to be very interesting as well. A
Mhm.
guy named Christopher F. Rufo, who's an investigative journalist, interviewed and he interviewed a law enforcement officer who investigates fraud.
Mhm.
Published the information he got anonymously because this law enforcement person did not want to be identified.
Mhm.
But this is what he said.
Okay.
There's a pattern
Mhm.
of foreign fraud rings that are operating inside the United States. So the detective answered the two most common are credit card fraud and elder fraud. That's
Yeah.
what we're talking about.
I would
He
imagine.
said in cases involving high dollars, like
Mhm.
$1,000 or more,
Mhm.
and the target is a stranger,
Mhm.
it's almost always perpetrated by foreigners.
Hmm.
He said in his entire time as a law enforcement officer, he has never seen a native-born American perpetrating these same kinds of frauds. It's almost always foreign
Really?
gangs, if
That's
you will.
interesting.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And some of this stuff, he says the typical organized crime credit card crew would be from Romania. And they're coming across the Mexican border illegally.
Mhm.
And then they just travel up and down the I-5 corridor.
Jeez.
These are the ones they're stealing credit cards.
Mhm.
And he says they have a computer and a printer in their car. They steal your credit card. They take your SIM card. They make fake IDs that match those credentials, and then they can do anything. He said they'll go down to the jewelry store down the block and buy a $4,000 Rolex watch before you're even out of the club.
Jeez.
Yeah,
Oh,
those are the
sick.
Romanians.
Mhm.
And then he went on to say, this
Mhm.
is also very interesting. Those are nonviolent crimes, and the
Mhm.
court system doesn't really regard them as very serious. So he said they're not extraditable. These people can work between states, and nobody's
So
gonna.
it's like crime in San Francisco. You just don't get anything until it's over a certain amount. No
Maybe.
problemo.
Well, so what he says is, he said, think about the West Coast. It's a
Uh-huh.
series of blue states, right?
Mhm.
And they have all enacted protections for immigrants and minority communities. Now,
Mhm.
minority meaning immigrant minority communities.
Okay.
So he said, if you get elected or if you get arrested,
Mhm.
you will probably not, you may not even be detained. And he said most of them do get arrested eventually, but they're not afraid of being arrested because they're immigrants.
Mhm.
They will not be held long.
Mhm.
If they are put in jail, it will be a short sentence and
Mhm.
no one will call ICE. They will not be deported out of the country. So he said, maybe you get a short sentence and you're right back out on the street and you can continue to do it.
It's almost like they want him here. I hope people
That
have finally
sounded
come to this
cynical there.
conclusion that they're that they very, very much want illegals here. Yeah, it's been a long-term plan for decades. Sickening.
Well,
Anyway.
yeah, he went on to the same law enforcement officer talked about the other
Mhm.
type of scam, by the way. So we have scam groups working inside the US,
Mhm.
and then there's scam groups working from outside the US.
Okay.
We all know like a Nigerian scam.
Okay.
He said, frankly, the Nigerian scammers are not even really the worst of it anymore.
Yeah, the
Which
most you'll
is
get is an
terrible.
email sent to your. So, somebody wants to give you $500 million today, and you've been chosen through email. Yes, I love those.
Well,
I always think of the
I thought-
Nigerians when I see those. Anyway.
This was another interesting thing. He said, don't for a
Mhm.
minute think that the drug cartels are not heavily involved in scams and
Mhm.
burglaries and thefts
Mhm.
because it's in their best interest to diversify as well.
Yeah.
So they've got a business model that says we're not just going to stop at selling drugs. And he said they do surveillance, they'll gather information about you, and then they'll take everything you've got. He said that the problem with all of this is once your money leaves the country, you're done. He said law enforcement cannot really do anything more about it. They're not extraditable crimes. So, you know, if, it's very sad.
Yeah.
The other thing he said about fraud is that these fraud scams are so time consuming to investigate that most law enforcement just doesn't. They just won't. They don't do it. And it doesn't matter. Now, if you're talking about welfare, Medicare fraud, you have to do something to get the attention of the people who would look into that. And one single case will not do it.
Yeah, I would imagine.
You're kind of on your own to fight it yourself. Because law enforcement just says, we're not that interested in it.
Right.
He said in 90% of the cases, a report's taken and that's it. Nobody ever follows up on it.
LB in the comments says they can also get your face photo from the SIM card. That is true. That is true. You were right about those SIM cards because they can reproduce your identity.
Your entire identity. Because that's what's on your phone.
They don't need to pick your pocket, people. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's so much fraud. There's so much fraud in medical. Oh my gosh. And then even our government paying all the COVID bucks, you know, for utilizing treatment.
How much COVID fraud was there?
Oh my gosh. I don't know, because that was one of the first times we hit the mark into the amount of money. The CARES Act was after 2020 was when we hit a whole new threshold in the cost of a bill passing, and it was so amazing to me because wasn't it over $1 trillion?
I think.
The CARES Act, and then that money filtrated all the way down into businesses across America. It was like payoff money to the states, payoff money to the medical, payoff money to the airlines, payoff money to everybody, and everybody stayed real compliant. You know, that's how you buy your compliance, is you just keep handing out COVID dollars. And our governor should be under investigation in Utah for taking that money and doing some of the most ludicrous things with it. But see, then the governors, like our state, would give it to all of the counties and the hospitals receiving huge amounts of money, tens of thousands of dollars for compliance for their COVID protocol that was killing people. So it's just amazing to me. It goes both ways. It's like you have your scammers, and then your government is the biggest fraudster of all. And then you've got and then under that would be your hackers and scammers from other countries, right? But I think the government's fraud is by far the worst. I really do.
So California just recently, this is within the last 2 weeks, I think, has arrested 5 people in connection with healthcare fraud and hospice fraud this last week. So
it's been hitting the news for sure.
Yeah, and part of the reason it's hitting the news is because of what Nick Shirley just did. So that's another thing. Gavin Newsom is just like, well, Nick Shirley, you know, he doesn't have any proof. He's just got a camera. Yeah, well, until he catches the thing that these YouTube journalists are doing and investigative reporters are doing, he's right. Newsom, yet again, is right. Nick Shirley is not producing hard evidence of the fraud, but he is drawing a lot of public attention. And where a lot of public attention goes, that means it makes it much harder for the politicians to ignore it or continue to feed the beast, either one.
Yeah.
So they're kind of in a spot now where they have to do something, which is good. We want them to do something.
Sure.
But what it will take whistleblowers inside those systems to come forward in order to get convictions that we all want.
Yeah.
And to shut it down. So let me.
Okay.
These 5 people that were arrested led to, like I said, they're billing the system for hospice services that were never provided. That fraud included 14 different hospice providers which collectively billed California $267 million.
Wow.
There's 14 providers.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And there's
That's crazy.
hundreds and hundreds of them.
That's nuts. Yeah.
And I suspect they are in every state. Nick Shirley went to the place where that was low-hanging fruit, right? It's not hard to find them in California.
Right.
But I bet I would be willing to wager you that every state has people who are defrauding the American taxpayers at that level or more. And we don't even know that those are the biggest ones in California either.
Right. Right.
Oh, it's so sad. It's just so sad. So how do they do it? The system of fraud is the same every single time. And it doesn't matter whether we're talking about like Enron fraud or whether we're talking about SNL fraud from back in the 80s or, how all these fraud systems, they work through a loophole that allows it allows them to do something without much regulatory oversight.
Like the Federal Reserve.
Oh, you don't say.
Biggest fraudsters ever. Yeah. Yeah.
And then what they do, once they've got their foot in and they see that it's a workable system, then they can scale that quickly. Then the next thing is everyone knows, but no one acts. So the fraud becomes normalized. I read in one place where back in the 80s, they said, well, this is just the cost of doing business. We know that fraud is happening, and that's just a fact. We can't stop it.
Right.
So when you begin to have that sort of thinking, if all of us in the whole United States said, well, we just can't do anything about it, and we're not going to do anything about it, then what happens next? Then it doesn't ever stop. It just grows.
True.
Then what happens, there will be a visible trigger. And that's what Nick Shirley was in this case. He was the trigger. It's a journalist or a whistleblower who comes out with a story that makes denying it anymore just untenable. You can't continue to say this is not a problem. And then the last thing that happens in the whole cycle is there's reform, but it's already too late. Millions and millions and millions of dollars have already been wasted and people have been enriched.
Right.
Criminals have been enriched. So, yeah, this is a thing that matters to all of us. We should all be very, very concerned about this level of fraud because all of us are going to interact with the health and medical system at some point.
Yeah, that's true.
And, I know in my household, we have had those struggles. I had a significantly ill baby and it took us a year to settle out all of the insurance claims and payouts and how that all was going to work.
Yeah.
And so it makes the whole system move slower for all of us because there are some people who are taking advantage of that system. And so we got messages over and over. Oh, that was fraud. That was fraud. We think you're trying to triple bill. And they put us as consumers in the middle of that. We got letters from the insurance company saying to us, your hospital did this thing and we think that was fraud. Go fix that. Yeah. That's, we got to the point where we said, that's not our problem. You go fix it. You go talk to them. You're the insurance company. You go talk to the doctor. We were not committing any fraud, by the way.
Right.
And we told them that. We said, no, they thought that the hospital was triple billing because they were doing a test at the start of every shift for this critically ill child. And we were like, no, they really are. They really were doing that test. We were there when it happened. So that kind of stuff.
And it took a year. Took a year.
It took us over a year. That was a long time ago now. That was, almost 27 years ago. So, so the more complex the system, the more complex the coding is, the more complex the billing systems, all that becomes, the more difficult it is for us as consumers to know what's happening. and the more difficult it is for those systems to be governed and have any kind of oversight. So, we don't,
Yeah.
do we really want the government to have to oversee every single thing?
Well, they shouldn't in a republic that we're supposed to have, not a democracy, but in a republic with limited government and the people having oversight over their government and telling their government what to do. No, the short answer.
Well, the problem that I have, Kate, is that I was just talking with somebody else about this just today, earlier in the day. I used to think that the corruption was at the top, and I could see that and know that and understand that. And I was like, oh yeah, congressmen, they all got their hand in the till. We know that. And what I think has happened is corruption has just percolated its way. Now I'm wondering, who's left that's honest? Are my neighbors all corrupt? Is the corruption we know now that corruption is there at the local level for sure?
In my area, I live in Washington County in Utah, and let me just tell you, knowing the politicians the way I do, I can't tell you there's an honest one. I can't tell you there's anyone there that actually is fighting for to get liberty back for the people and to get taxation reduced and to expose anything that's going on. There isn't anyone, and that's really sad because when I started, I thought we might have a few, and we don't. They're liars, and so it's very difficult at this point because in my county, we're considered a very conservative county, so you can only imagine, and they do as much harm to us on the right here as the leftists do. And so people always blame the leftists, but when the right is doing what the leftists would do, they just do it with a smile under a different banner, then you have a significant problem. And that's what my problem here in my county is. It's like you can't get anyone honest because the parties pick the people winning the elections. So they pick who they can do business with.
Yet again, I'm going to say the same thing as what I said before when we were talking about AI data centers. The problem isn't just politicians either.
Right.
The politicians is businesses that are corrupt and who are operating hand in glove with corrupt politicians to defraud the general public out of things. When the AI data people come into the town and they're making everybody sign NDAs about the sale of property that's going to go to a data center, that's not exactly straightforward and honest.
Yeah.
And so we have that. That's what I mean. The corruption is, I used to think it was just kind of contained. I don't think it is anymore. Do I think my doctor's honest and straightforward? No. Do I think, my local grocery store is honest and straightforward? I have my doubts about some of that. And, it's a grocery store, for goodness sake. But, look at what they're talking about with grocery stores. They're talking about flexible pricing.
Right.
So we are being victimized. The average consumer is being victimized at almost every level.
Yeah.
Whether we're talking about, just our day-to-day operations, whether we're talking about, whatever. If my kid has a cold and I have to take him to the doctor, do I really trust that doctor to tell me the truth anymore?
No, but they'll write you a script. So that's what people want. They want a script. So they'll write you a pharma.
Well, how about this? Most fraud.
Which is fraud. Because they're not telling you about health.
Well,
okay, go ahead.
They're victims of their own education. But most fraud that happens is never detected and never reported.
Yeah.
So this is a huge problem. If we say that $1 trillion worth of fraud is happening every year and most of it is never detected or never reported, how big is the problem really?
Wow.
Ooh, it's really, really bad.
Yeah.
So because California is always wanting to be they want to be at the front line of this fight, right?
Yeah.
So they have a bill that they've dubbed the Stop Nick Shirley Act that's pending in the legislature right now. After he posted his video on X, and got 42 million views for it. Then what they said, this act will outlaw the sharing of photos or personal data of immigrant service providers on the internet in the state. So what Gavin Newsom has said that Nick Shirley is just a racist because he exposed the Somalis with the daycare fraud. And in California, he exposed a whole group of Armenian immigrants that were running these fraudulent hospice outfits. So what Nick Shirley says about that is, I was looking at daycare fraud and there you were. I was not looking to out Somalis. I was just looking at daycare fraud. I didn't look for anybody in particular. And he says the same about what happened in California. He says, I was not looking to out any particular immigrant group. However, what this legislation would do would be to prevent him from then broadcasting anything that had any immigrant in it. If they were involved, he can't take his hidden cameras to the places and talk to the employees there if they are immigrants. Sound right to you?
No.
They're defrauding the United States taxpayers, but he's not allowed to talk about it. That's
interesting.
And this has not been passed yet. This is simply pending. It would criminalize investigative journalism with misdemeanor $10,000 fines, imprisonment, and content takedown.
So it always is going to do this, but it's going to lead me to think that that Nick might be somebody that is propped up as controlled op, so that a bill passes to prevent people from looking into things, possibly. I don't know.
Well, if you want to trust this, Dr. Oz has also done an expose very similar to Nick Shirley with the same results too.
Okay.
And so Dr. Oz is now functioning within the government framework, right? And Kate, I don't think every single thing is, I really don't think Nick Shirley is propped up opposition. I think it's just low-lying fruit that he was able to just expose it. So what should we do? Say he is opposition that's going to prop them up to do this. Should we let the fraud go on without comment?
No, I just think what I wish is that more people would expose more government fraud, because it's so rampant at this point.
Well, this is government fraud.
Yeah, I mean, even more so. Like even on, just in the amounts that it's actually happened. I would love to see that. I just always wonder when you see a bill in somebody's name like that, I'm like, interesting. Because usually down the road, it kind of turns out that something's going on there. And we see a lot of people propped up, but for various reasons, right? And they'll find something that is real. And then you find out that the whole reason that this person found something real was to turn it into something like this, where there's a bill, right, that would prevent future, investigations. So I just thought of that.
That's too cynical. That's too cynical for me. That's a bridge too far. I want to believe that there are still people in the United States who really do. And this is defraud somewhere or other. There's people inside the government who probably know that this is going on, and either they're being paid kickbacks for not exposing, the 45 hospices that are running at the same address.
Right.
I mean, we have, trust me when I tell you, we had a caseworker when my husband just had some surgery, and we had a caseworker from the insurance company who called and talked to me while he was still in the hospital.
Wow.
Wanting to know what was going on and what was happening, what medically was going on, how he was doing. And she stayed with us for about, December, January, February, about 3 months.
Wow.
So why is it that a private insurance company can have a caseworker on my husband's file, but there is no one inside of Medicare who does that?
Interesting.
That's why it's going to take whistleblowers.
Yeah.
And
lot of
ultimately,
them.
Nick Shirley, whatever Nick Shirley has exposed,
Mhm.
does not have any weight in a court. They're not going to call him into a courtroom to testify. He has no information that's
Mhm.
evidentiary. They need the whistleblowers from inside those organizations to step forward
Mhm.
and say, hey, I was directed to, fill out
Mhm.
these forms or to put these
Right.
people's names in. What would it take to get people to do that? I don't know, because I think these
Mhm.
daycares and the hospice groups are frauded all the way through.
Sure. Yeah.
And then
I
where
agree.
is the money going?
Yeah.
Do we even know where that money goes?
I'd like to know where all the NASA money goes. I'd like to know where all the Israel money goes. We've given Israel over $200 billion at least from money that we know of.
Well, we
I
know
would
where it goes. It goes
love
to Israel.
know. Well, I don't know. I don't think it all goes there, but I do think it's a great front because you can't say no. So right in America, so it's kind of interesting. There's a lot of money being sent a lot of places. It's like the Ukraine war with BlackRock handling the money. Does anyone trust BlackRock? And so with all of the money being spent over there that has been spent since 2022, kind of amazing. I think that money has gone more into building a smart country, building it as a smart country. But there's so many forms of fraud. There's so many rampant, just sectors of fraud. It's amazing to me when you start really looking at all of it. And I do agree that hospice is going to be one of the most frauded areas because we have this big section of baby boomers now. So,
well, by the way, Medicare hospice claims in California have gone up 1,000%.
Yeah.
While the population in
Right.
California has remained stable.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another indication. There's lots of red flags.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You want the appropriate use of AI.
Mhm.
Let AI begin to flag these places that don't seem to be operating appropriately, and then send your investigators there.
Right.
And quit surveilling me and look for the bad guys.
Yes, wouldn't that be fun? I was reading a comment from somebody that walked into a store and it was you couldn't enter into the store without your face being read by a camera. You seen that? And I was just wondering how much that's going on right now. And I wonder,
I think that's going on everywhere.
Yeah, and like you said, the spying is so out of control, and no one talks about it. No one talks about it.
Who are they spying
in government?
On? They're spying on ordinary people.
Yes.
We've got what are they called? The flock cameras that are watching.
Yeah.
If you miss that red light, if you're going too fast, you're going to get the ticket.
Yeah, they'll nail you. Yes.
While we have people defrauding Medicare to the tune of $1 trillion and nobody can stop it, nobody can figure out how to stop that.
Yeah.
This is outrageous. Of course they could stop it.
It kind of reminds me, it's like the biggest fraud won't be stopped, but the little things that they accuse us of fraud will. And it's funny because you look at COVID, what a fraud the entire operation was. But you won't hear anything about that. You just won't. People were gone after for not getting the shot, not having like a fake ID, but go after the big lie. The big lies, that's why I say, are so much easier to tell because people don't go after them. We're not going to go after NASA's money. We're not going to find out where the money for NASA really goes. We're just going to be told that it goes to a space mission and everybody has to be happy about that, right? So it's very interesting. The bigger the lie, the more cover they have.
Well, why is that? Why do they come after the little people?
I wish I knew. I think if people were awake, it wouldn't happen. They wouldn't allow it. But I think because people just don't, they can't think in those terms that there might be a ginormous fraud happening. I think the entire COVID was a lie. I think the entire thing was a complete and utter lie. They just renamed the flu for a while and pneumonia, and so they called it COVID. But people can't think of it in those terms. They have to think that COVID appeared. And then it disappeared. And then the variants appeared, and then the variants disappeared. Like they have to hang on to it. I don't know.
Well, my question is, why do I have to, why do they come after me? Trust me, the IRS will come after any one of us if they think that we're defrauding on our taxes, right? Yeah. But here's people who are taking the federal government, through Medicare, Medi-Cal, whatever the group is.
Yes.
They're taking them for millions of dollars per year. And they seemingly get away with it. Why do they come after the small? And I think my own personal thinking on that is because it's almost impossible for us as one single individual to fight the behemoth. Right. We can't, like this woman who got a pickleball injury and found out that she's in hospice. How does she fight that back? And they told her, you have to keep paying your premiums or we're going to cut you off. Because how does she fight that? She's fighting a system that's so much bigger than her, and they take us out one at a time. Right. And I think I have always thought that is truly the magic that we have. We have to fight them one at a time too. We have to make sure that our hearts are clean. And then we have to make sure that we're holding individuals accountable, because we can pick off the one local guy. We can't take down this whole system. It's almost impossible for one person. My husband has fought about property taxes for years and years and years. And it got to the point where our county auditor said, do not call my office anymore. I'm tired of talking to you, Mr. Smith.
Wow.
So we need to be, if she was flooded by 500 people doing that, it would make a difference.
Right.
But that requires each one of us as individuals to take accountability for it. If we were all talking back to our doctor, one of us can be taken down by the doctor. But 100 or 1,000 of us in a practice, that's a different thing.
Yeah.
So we don't realize the power that we have one by one as this seems kind of paradoxical, one by one as a group. I don't think it's going to be great to go and protest out in front of the hospital. I don't think that gets anywhere. But if every one of us spoke up in the doctor's office. I just told a doctor recently, if you put me down as uncooperative, fine, because I am. Go ahead.
I want to be put down as uncooperative. That's a badge of honor.
It will make it more difficult for me to find medical care in the future. But like I said, if all of us were doing that, it would be better.
Yeah.
It's harder to fight, but what they have done is they've banded together and created these systems that are almost impossible to stand up against as one person. It's quite literally, it's David and Goliath.
Yeah.
Only Goliath has the might of entire federal bureaucracies.
Right.
Like, how are you going to defund NASA all by yourself, Kate?
I can't.
No.
That's the truth. I can't.
And maybe that's not the fight you pick first.
Right. Let's take a caller. Hi, caller. Welcome to the show. Go right ahead.
Well, hi, Kate. Hi. Melissa.
Hi.
Melissa?
Yeah, Melissa's on. Go right ahead.
Awesome. Hey, I love the conversation today. And I just wanted to let you know, Melissa, that this is exactly what a local group in Southern Utah is doing right now. So they are trying to put a data center into this little tiny county. And of course, it's private property because the owner sold the land, right? But we are getting together and we are all coming up with a critical eye on what we can do to add to the conditional use permit and make it as challenging and as cost deterrent as possible for this project to come to fruition. And that's what needs to happen. People need to, even though they're not going to come together and maybe protest with signs outside, right? Individually, one by one, if you're going to flood something with facts, and they have to be facts, they can't be emotions. But we have plenty, plenty that we are flooding now, the county planner and saying, hey, by the way, don't be naive, right? Like, because they're literally buying everything that they're being told, hook, line, and sinker.
Right.
And I think that's kind of the default, because people, I mean, let's be real, homegrown people are good, and they think that everybody else is the same way. And a lot of us get jaded, and so that's why we start to question everything. And there's nothing wrong in that, because you always need to have that black hat in the group to look for those issues that might be bigger problems down the road.
Right.
But again, the whole concept is, how can we flood this system to say, wait a minute, we are not the outliers, we are the majority, and we really do have a problem here, and you need to recognize it. So I love where you're going, and I totally agree that is the way to get things done.
Yeah. Thank you. Really appreciate the phone call. Thank you.
The last couple of weeks we've been talking about what asymmetrical warfare looks like.
Yes.
And that's what it looks like.
Yeah.
You know, make it costly for them to do business in your county.
I totally
You have to make it harder. And that means you have to unite on a lot of fronts, including just the public relations front.
True.
You have to make it so that they are unpleasant. They know that they're not wanted. I just heard that in my state, my governor, he says he's an agnostic about data centers. If the local community wants it, he thinks that's fine. If the local community doesn't want it, then he thinks that's fine too. They should have the right to say that. And I thought, well, the problem that we have is that we're up against data centers who are enforcing like non-disclosure agreements so that the local people don't even know it's coming.
Right.
So how do you fight it? You have to fight it on environmental terms. You have to fight it on, I don't know, today's Earth Day. So let's talk about nature terms. What is it going to do to light pollution? What is it going to do to groundwater? What is it going to do to everybody's? You have to fight it on every front and make it expensive for them. And it's the same with COVID.
Right.
We had to fight it that way with COVID as well. It had to become more expensive to deal with us than it was to oppress us.
Yeah.
Frankly.
Well, and like the data center, she said the fight's over the data center, right? Coming to their town. And a lot of towns are facing this right now. So I'd have to say that one of the things we should probably be doing as a citizenry is actually check what's inside that data center. Get receipts for what's actually happening in the data center, because those data centers will raise your cost of utilities. And at Davos, they said that in their most recent Davos, Larry Fink, the Finkster, said that your utilities will be now under the priority of the data centers, and the data centers get it all, and then we'll basically be kind of like left to whatever we can get from our utility companies. Okay, so they're gonna charge higher prices. That's the idea, and so get receipts. Make sure that data center actually has that data in it, because I think it's a huge fraud. I think it's a lie, actually. And I think they're utilizing those data centers to raise your cost of living. But I don't think it's actually going to be real. I think those centers are for something else later on. But there's just so much fraud that if we don't start demanding what's inside the receipts, I want to go through that data center. And right now they go, oh, you just can't see in there. Well, we should be able to do that as citizenry because we're paying for it, right? So there's lots of different kinds of fraud that we could like whistle blow on if people got together and actually demanded it.
Don't forget who we could be doing something about Medicare fraud.
Right.
But we don't. Why don't we?
Right. Because
they pick us off one at a time. Most people are not even aware of the size of the fraud that's happening, because I'm not immediately impacted by that, right? It's a hidden cost because I don't see it right up in my face. Now, data centers are kind of easier to see. We're going to build a building here.
But it's like what's inside. Yes. But yes.
Well, it is. What's inside matters. But this kind of soft fraud that we're talking about with like Enron, Did we get all inflamed about Enron? And you know, all of us can't be angry about everything all the time.
Right.
Nor should we.
You have to live your life. I get that. Yes. You have to be able to live.
But the real cost of some of this fraud has to do with how much we have to pay in taxes. And it's a lot. We're paying a lot of money in taxes to enrich people who are perpetrating the worst kind of fraud on American citizens that have to work for it. It makes me angry.
Right.
And you know, that's another reason. I think many of us, I've heard this argument forever, like we all have our taxes withheld from our paychecks. So we don't ever really see how much we're paying. Maybe we need to go back to not having anything withheld, and you have to pay it all at once and write a check for it at the end of the year.
Yeah. We might feel a little differently.
I think a lot of people would be a lot more up in arms about, what do you mean I'm paying all this in taxes?
Right.
But it's kind of easy to kind of close your eyes and not worry about it.
It is. And it does feel big. It's so big that it's very, very hard to wrap our brains around, and it's very hard to fight because there's so much of it. It's so rampant. Yeah. And I get it. I understand it. It's just so, when I went through the numbers in the very beginning, I mean, you just think about some of our biggest centers of fraud, in the United States. And it's pretty amazing how I think people just stopped asking questions. I don't know that they, because it's so big, it's just like the behemoth. How do you deal with that? It's very, very difficult. So I get it.
I don't know. At one time in my life, I had a problem.
Yeah.
And I described it to my husband as I was facing an iceberg ahead, and all I had was a little ice hammer to fight it with. And I said, so what do you do when you have this giant iceberg and just one little hammer and there's just one little me?
Right.
And I thought, well, what you do is you just start chipping away.
Yeah.
Because what else can you do? And you hope that other people will also join in with their little hammers and it'll grow. But, we just, you have to own the piece that we can own. Well,
yeah.
As we kind of roll out of the hour today, and I just brought up icebergs totally inadvertently. I just have a funny thing to share with everyone because I just found this to be so entertaining.
What's that?
Completely off topic.
What's that?
All right. The Titanic sunk April 15th, 114 years ago. So that was just last week or even this week. I don't even know what day it is today.
It was definitely manipulated to sink. I will add that into the equation, but go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, there is a little museum just outside of Chicago that has a Titanic exhibit. And the Titanic still to this day attracts a lot of attention. People, the movie was huge and people just love to talk about it, love to speculate about it. There's lots of stuff about the Titanic. Well, anyway, here in the Midwest, we've had quite a rainy time in the last couple of weeks. And on April 15th, the Titanic exhibit at this little museum flooded. And all the people in the area are like, ooh, it's supernatural. The Titanic exhibit is flooding at the museum. It just made me laugh.
I bet.
Do I think it's supernatural? No, I think it's the result of us having like torrential rain for 2 weeks here. Some really significant storms, but I think it's just a diversion in the world of grim news. The people at the museum were able to save everything. Nothing got harmed or damaged or injured. They were able to prevent all of the, anything bad from happening. But it certainly added a layer of mystery.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So they said they've only ever had one other flood in the history of the museum. So the fact that this happened on the very anniversary of the Titanic sinking.
Wow.
Conspiracy? Was it a conspiracy?
So much to the Titanic. Yeah. So
Was it done
much.
on purpose to draw people to the
was-
museum?
33 degrees latitude, just like our Artemis team spent 33 hours in space. Anyways, it's just
I want to know how they got the iceberg to do it, though.
Mm.
What did they say to the
they just
iceberg? How did they get it?
they just purposefully ran it into it, I would imagine. They killed off the 3 bankers that were standing in the way of the Federal Reserve, that's for sure. When all the rich were supposed to get the lifeboats, the 3 richest people in the world didn't get a lifeboat. They just mysteriously
Kate,
died.
you are so grim.
I know.
The Titanic is a very grim subject anyway.
I'm fun for a rental at parties, by the way. I will come. I will kill your party in like 2 seconds. Yes, I will.
Rent the buzzkill.
People love talking to me. Anyway.
I know. I enjoy it every Wednesday. It's the height of my week.
Oh, I really appreciate you. Thanks a lot, Melissa. I really do appreciate that. I also wanted to mention something because people were mentioning Israel, and how much money we spend on Israel. And I want to give people like this little snapshot before we go, because I think this is kind of interesting. All right. So I did a show not too long ago, a week or 2 ago, where I talked about Hezbollah and Hamas and ISIS. And these were all creations of the intelligence communities. Okay. Whether it is military intelligence, CIA, just intelligence. I'll just do the intelligence racket. Okay. And I said, these are creations. The ISIS alone, you see, the matching Toyota trucks that were sent over with the matching white outfits, which they would never wear if they weren't some little controlled op group. So you have these groups, and then Israel admitted they created Hamas. Okay. And so you have these groups over there, and Israel's been attacked by these groups, right? That's what we've been told over the last 50 years. Well, the money sent out to the 4 top countries, like the 4 top countries that we've given money to, okay, is Iraq, okay, Afghanistan. Afghanistan is is 2.4 trillion. Iraq is 2 trillion. Vietnam 1 trillion. Okay, so these are companies we've sent a lot of our tax dollars to. Okay, and then in Israel, it's 300 billion that we know of. Okay, but here's the deal, though. It's very tiny compared to these other countries. Okay. And so if you look at it that way, it's kind of interesting because Vietnam was 3 million a kilometer. That's how much money we spent. And Iraq was 4.5 million a kilometer. So kind of in the same area-ish. Okay. And then Afghanistan was 3.6 trillion, a million per kilometer. Okay. So you have 3 million Vietnam, Iraq, 4.5 million, Afghanistan, 3.6 million. But when you get to Israel with its size, okay, it's 13.6 million per kilometer goes over to Israel. And I don't think we ever realize how much money is actually being spent all the time on Israel. And if the groups, like I said, are projects of the CIA and very controlled, that would be an interesting component into how attacked they've been for us to sanction this much money over 50 years. Kind of crazy. So $13.6 million per kilometer, as opposed to like 3 million per kilometer in Afghanistan and so forth. So I just thought this was kind of an interesting point to bring up, because a lot of people ask me about the funding of Israel and why is it so broad? Why is it so intense? Why are we constantly funding Israel? And we've never, ever exposed anything about Israel. They've never been seen in a negative light ever since, even with the sinking of the ship, right? The Lusitania. So even with that, we still always positive. But other countries, we go positive then negative, right? Or we're ousting, or we're doing all these different things. But with Israel, it's always positive. So I just wanted to bring up the numbers because I think it's kind of crazy how much money is going in, and I don't think we realize it. So just a point to kind of bring up, a point to kind of think about, and realize that we are in it's a weird situation that people don't bring up, because the leftists are into Israel hate, but for some of the wrong reasons, I think. But then the right has a hard time accepting that there's a deep state in Israel. So, and that deep state is in control of that government. So it's very strange to have that conversation because you're labeled something right away. I mean, right away, right? And so I just wanted to bring it up just to kind of give you kind of a number scan real quickly on how much money is going over there per area. Okay. So, how much in kilometers, you can even do miles if you wanted to, but I just thought that was kind of interesting. Thought I'd bring it up because a lot of money gets sent over there and I'm not quite sure that, I just don't know where that money's going. I mean, you go back to just the October 7th attack, right? So if they're so short up with cash and we have been funding them for all of these years, right? With the most stellar equipment, the most stellar everything. How did October 7th happen? Right? Because a piece of paper can't get through that border without them knowing. So when you get to the bottom of that rabbit hole, you start asking some really interesting questions, right? So just saying that not quite sure anything could ever happen over there without them knowing, with all the money that they've spent on defense. But it's very, very fascinating because with so much money being given, has it gone other places too? Just a thought. So just wanted to kind of bring that up because, man, we're giving a lot of money away. So, and always because of these little attacks, and I say little attacks because no attack has ever damaged their true infrastructure or really their country. They've been very tiny attacks, which is kind of interesting. So, I mean, they've recovered so quickly, you wouldn't even hardly know anything happened kind of quick. So I'm just saying that because I think sometimes we just don't really look under the cover on that to see what's going on with their deep state. I had Ron Paul on and he said, oh, their whole government's deep state. So I love Ron Paul. He's so funny. He has like no filter and I love that about him. But I just thought I just wanted to add that in. So be faithful, be fearless, and please go to the website, go get some Cardio Miracle so you feel good, because 20 times the fruits and vegetables of any other product out there. And the minerals are amazing and we're all mineral deficient. So it's causing a lot of disease. Please go try cardiomiracle.com/Kate. And then also get to the website as well. There's so many wonderful things to try out there that I take. I do take Recuperate Copper and Krill. Krill is for cardiovascular health. It's also for cognitive and it's also for heart. I take Krill. It's like your fish oil, right? I take Krill IQ from formulaiq.com. It's an amazing product. My husband and I both take it, actually. So Krill and Recuperate Copper, get your copper up. And then, of course, get over, that's formulaiq.com. Code word is always Kate to get a discount. But please go get the cancer book at katetalks.myshopify.com. Make sure you're ordering that and getting that on your computer, print it out, whatever you need to do. Make sure you have that information. It's 14 to 15 pages on what to do if you get cancer that is not chemo, that is not the medical pharma cabal. Okay? It's all about your health and how to actually beat it without doing what pharma says. Okay. This is the gold. This is the ebook everyone's been asking me to do for years and years and years. And I finally put it out, and go check it out. It's at katetalks.myshopify.com. Go grab it. And really appreciate you guys. And I know I'm playing the music over and over. Anyway, you guys, thank you. I'll see you here tomorrow with the green smoothie girl, Robin Openshaw. I will be on with her tomorrow. Same time, same bat channel. See you tomorrow.